Where are we? Book number 16 in the 100 book challenge. This is going to be a tough one. Philosophy students despair because a dude in an Aquaman t-shirt is about to tell you why Wittgenstein is full of baloney. So this is Tractatus, doesn't matter. Logico-Philosophicus by Ludwig Wittgenstein. Philosopher, professor, teacher, kind of nutcase. Wrote this, I think this was published originally in 1921. To a certain amount of fanfare amongst a kind of a sliver of philosophers around the world. It published in 1922. This is famous because it was sort of, I think it was one of those kind of books or papers, whatever you want to call it. It's very short. You can see the whole thing. It's just like this. It was kind of given a certain gravitas by the fact that Bertrand Russell, who was obviously an extremely accomplished and well thought of philosopher at the time, and still is. I've read Bertrand Russell and thought he is really smart and has got a lot of great things to say. But he sort of took young Ludwig, and Wittgenstein was really young when he wrote this, very young. Kind of took him under his wing and said, hey, everybody, you should be listening to this guy because he's got some great ideas. Okay. But we'll get back to that in a minute. This is one of those books that is just notoriously hard, right? It's the difficult book. It's kind of a book that, is out there in the world as sort of, if you get it, then you're part of some sort of, I don't know, intellectual elite even. I don't know if that's even true anymore. It probably isn't true anymore, especially since in his later career, Wittgenstein basically said, yeah, not so much with that, and then went in a completely different direction. So there's that to consider. But basically, this is one of those books that everybody says is difficult. I'm going to disagree with that, right? It's not difficult at all. I mean, if you, I think, go into it like most people do and like I did, thinking in here is wisdom, in here are secrets that once learned, once understood, will help you in some way. I don't know, right? All of philosophy is supposed to be that, isn't it? Now we're going to be thinking in a different way, in a better way, and we're going to be better people, and we're going to be better citizens of whatever. I don't know what we're trying to do. Let's be honest. I don't know what we're trying to do. And clearly neither did Wittgenstein. Even in his preface here, this is our man Ludwig's own words. He said, this book will perhaps only be understood by those who have themselves already thought the thoughts which are expressed in it, or similar thoughts. The same could be said of any book. So what does that mean? Right? It sort of, is that his roundabout way of saying if you get it, you get it? And then really the most famous quote comes at the bottom. You see I'm underlining. I read this. I paid attention. I pay attention. I read for a living. I have my red pen out. My very cheap red pen that you can buy in bulk. This is really the most, I think, certainly the most famous quote from the book that you see all the time, right? Over and over again. And in fact, it's something that I kept seeing attributed to him that made me want to read this, because I thought, well, that's interesting, right? He might be onto something there. Let's read the book that expounds on that, yeah? And what he said here is, what can be said at all can be said clearly, and whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Yeah? I tend to buy into that. That, say things clearly, say what you mean, and if you don't know what you're talking about, it's okay to shut up. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to be the world's foremost expert, right? You don't have to mansplain your way through life. Term is so stupid. Anyway, then he gets into this, which is organized in a way that is indicative of where his mindset is, right? He's approaching philosophy here as a mathematician. And that is, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing in the first place, but this is where his whole thing immediately falls apart, just the second of his little aphorisms here, I'm not sure what else to call them. The world is the totality of facts, not of things. No, right? No? Do you think so? I think the world is things. I mean, I'm talking to you through a microphone. Here's the thing. Got this from Amazon for like $20. It works pretty good. Can you hear me? That's a thing, right? The super cool old school Aryan Aquaman t-shirt is a thing that I bought. I'm a thing, right? iPhone I'm talking into right now is a thing. It's all things. And facts are descriptions of things. Yeah? Like, I know for a fact that this is an iPhone. Unless somehow, I ordered it from T-Mobile and they sent me some kind of counterfeit iPhone. That's true. I don't know, right? But the thing in itself would tell me that if I did launch some sort of investigation. There's no reason to do that. So right away, I'm kind of like, yeah, no, right? And then he just starts kind of making up terms for things. An atomic fact is a combination of objects. Okay. I don't know if I want to go through all of my little notes in here. Let's just kind of go through some. This is me cherry picking. I will admit to cherry picking. I pick cherries for stuff that's kind of back up my arguments against Ludwig Wittgenstein, or at least this portion of his career. Only if there are objects can there be a fixed form of the world. Sure. Right? The total reality is the world. That depends on what you mean by world. Do you mean universe? I guess, right? No. Oh, lots of stuff about the totality of true thoughts and pictures of the world, and what the difference between a picture and a proposition and an atomic fact is, which I think I understood, but I didn't want to. It's kind of like, and I don't get what you're saying yet in the sort of first really half of this. Until it kind of becomes clear, I think that's what he's been saying all along, in which case it's kind of, huh? I don't know, right? But he says stuff that sounds kind of smart. The totality of true thoughts is a picture of the world. I think I understand what he means by that, right? Like the truth that I'm talking to you through this iPhone, I'm going to post this on YouTube. These are true things. And you're getting a picture of the world based on that. It's true that I'm wearing an Aquaman t-shirt. I'm sitting in front of this bookcase over here, or whatever it is. Okay. Right? And then what's interesting for a book that is clearly a philosopher writing a work of philosophy that was sponsored essentially by another philosopher, Bertrand Russell, and was meant to talk to philosophers and philosophy students about philosophy, this is an anti-philosophy book. Well, Wittgenstein is saying that essentially because philosophy is based on language that is not based entirely on provable facts, then there's no point in it at all. Because it's just sort of about, well, I think this, and I kind of feel like maybe, like maybe we have a soul, or it seems like it should be that if we were just really cool with each other, everybody would be cool back, or, right? And he seems to be just rejecting that. He's overtly stating that he's against that. That unless there is a fact that you can state, 2 + 2 does equal 4, it's true, then you can say that. But if you say, I think maybe, or what if it's possible that, there's no point. And so what he's trying to accomplish here is a language based only on these atomic facts, right? Everything that you say has to begin with a completely irrefutable truth. And unless you're speaking in an only truth-based way, you're not really saying anything. You're just kind of mumbling nonsense, right? And he says things like philosophy is not a theory but an activity. Like, okay, but it's an activity that puts forward theories, right, about the nature of consciousness or politics, etc., right? And I know that Wittgenstein starts with that and then says, yeah, no, that's not true. Because what we really need is this sort of mathematical-based language. And then, there's some things I wrote here. This makes no sense. What can be shown cannot be said. This is a microphone. Like, what? Like, what? What? And that's what it is. It really starts to sound kind of like stoner philosophy, right? A lot of this book would be made more simple if he just wrote the word dude, comma, in front of all these statements, right? Dude, what can be shown cannot be said. Oh, dude. Yeah. That makes sense only after like the 14th bowl. Now I'm just I didn't want to get angry because I wasn't angry reading this. I was not an anger. I wasn't. You're right. This didn't make me angry. And it didn't confuse me either. It just seemed not true. And it seemed to be that kind of fake, just sort of, I'm trying to be profound, when at the same time he's saying there's no reason to ever do that. We only are talking about absolute facts, and the atomic fact is what? Here he says, in no way can an inference be made from the existence of one state of affairs to the existence of another entirely different from it. What does that mean? That's a false equivalence. Right? Isn't it? He's saying we can't infer from something something else. It's like, what are you even talking about? And so this is the thing. It's like, is there a difference between, and there certainly is, and this is what I'm here to tell you, right? There's a difference between being difficult on purpose, right, and not really having anything to say that makes sense. And so really sort of torturing the language that he's saying is insufficient in order to tell us we need to create a language that is sufficient, right? By putting forward things like this. Men have always thought that there must be a sphere of questions whose answers a priori are asymmetrical and united into a closed regular structure. I said asymmetrical, but are symmetrical and united in a closed regular structure. A sphere in which the proposition simplex sigillum veri is valid. So it's not 1922 anymore, so I could just look up online what simplex sigillum veri means. It's Latin for simplicity is the sign of truth. If what you're trying to say is simplicity is the sign of truth, why not translate that? Right? Why not say a sphere in which the proposition simplicity is the sign of truth is valid? Instead of complicating the sentence in which you're trying to say simplicity is important, more complex by throwing in Latin. Okay, I get it that everybody with a sort of classical European education in 1922, coming from a wealthy family as he did, or a reasonably wealthy family, everybody's got the Latin, right? So he's kind of saying we should never say anything that we can't say, this is true, these two things are true together, this is not true because of these two things being true, whatever, right? And then goes about that in the worst possible way, kind of making up his own math and weird little symbols and stuff like that, that just, what are you even talking about, sir? What are you even talking about, right? This one, I had to put a question mark at the end of this, obviously. His whole point here, number 5.476, for those of you keeping score out there, it is clear that we are not concerned here with a number of primitive ideas which must be signified, but with the expression of a rule. I think that's what he's trying to say, right? That we shouldn't be using language to talk about fluffy stuff, feelings and ideas and theories. We should only be using language to say, this is absolutely true, that is absolutely true, these two things are absolutely true. I don't know. Now I'm just kind of flipping through this, and I think I'm ready to just be done with the Logico-Philosophicus. Let's do this, right? This is, I mean, I kind of wrote this on Goodreads. And honestly, it's not difficult, this book. And I think that that's a terrible burden that this is carrying. Is that a burden, right? Or an aura that somebody has said, or so many people have said, oh, you really got to tuck in. Like, you got to come with all of your brain cells, and you need to decode this. And when you do, you will see the massive truth behind the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. And you will identify Wittgenstein, at least again, the young Wittgenstein, as the genius that he apparently thought himself to be. But it's not difficult, right? There's a difference between he's got something to say that's hard to say, and he says it the best way he can, and it's a complicated subject, and there's a lot to think about and a lot packed in there. I'm ready for that, yeah? That's not what this is, right? This book is not difficult and worth it. Yeah. This book is nonsensical. It's a series of proofs, right? Literally in the mathematical sense, of a mistaken assertion at the core of his theory, right? Which is shown for the falsehood that it is, right? By his own sort of pseudo-mathematical gibberish. He's saying, right, language should only be based on truth. It should only be essentially 2 + 2 = 4, right? This is true or this is not true. And it should be like math. And it seems like that's what he seems to be missing. That we already have a language to express the absolute truth of things that begin with This is a number, right? Whether it's base 10 or it's binary or base 12 or whatever, right? In our base 10, this is 2, this is 2. When you put those together, you have 4, right? Mathematics already has that. It begins with a sort of an atomic statement, right? That says, we know what this number is, right? We know what that number is. We have these things in relationship to each other. We want to add them, subtract them, divide them, do even much more complicated math than I will ever be capable of, right? I'm not a math guy. But that's what math is. Mathematics is the language of the absolute true, right? It is the language of the proof. I even use that word, right? I will prove to you that, right, the area of this triangle is 73 feet, right, square feet. Okay, so then Bertrand Russell, again, who's somebody I have read, right, lent his name and credibility to this. He tries to explain Wittgenstein, and one of the things that I do when there's an introduction in any kind of nonfiction book like this is actually I didn't read the instructions in the Book of the New Sun either until I was done. I always read those last because for me, it's, in fiction, certainly it's a spoiler alert. It's like, well, and then in the end, this is what, like, wait, what? So I just skip that and come back to it in the end, and I did that here too. And I thought, okay, Bertrand Russell is actually a philosopher who could write. And I've read a bunch of his stuff, and I get it, and he's really interesting. And he's interesting because he has a great way of communicating his ideas and his thoughts in the written word, right? So, yay, Bertrand Russell, let's go. Tell me that I'm wrong, was what I went into this introduction. Like, show me where I missed it. Where I'm seeing Wittgenstein trying to torture language into mathematics, apparently forgetting that mathematics was already there to do what he believes language should be doing. Yeah. But instead of explaining that, showing me that I was wrong, Russell just sort of showcases the inherent reductive falsehood of Wittgenstein's foundational premise, right? It's just not true that anything that isn't absolutely true or absolutely untrue is of no consequence. I mean, what I'm saying right now is not absolutely true, and it's not absolutely false. It's me reading this guy's book and thinking about it. And yeah, that's what philosophy is. That's what language actually is. Mathematics will get you from the launch pad to a particular spot on the sea of tranquility, right? You need mathematics for stuff like that. But for stuff like this, or what this is putting itself forward as, is philosophy, you need something else. You need language that is based on emotion and everything else, yeah? And I think Russell seems to be trying to help Wittgenstein, right? But all he really does is kind of help prove that Wittgenstein was chasing after not just the invention of a dramatically inferior language, right? Like a language that is only, this is absolutely true, this is absolutely true, and we're not going to grade that in any way, right? We're just going to walk around stating facts. Which again is already handled in the realm of mathematics, right? It's just, right? It's not just inadequate for philosophical discussion, right? Philosophical discussion is about the things that aren't necessarily absolutely provable. That's what science is. Science does that, or tries to do that, right? Shoots for that. We know for sure that these symptoms were caused by this virus, the COVID-19 virus. Right, this is this is how it works. This is all right. Science is trying to be precise about the atomic fact. Philosophy is about the fuzzy. It's about the uncertainty. It's about the what if this? I don't know. What about that? This guy said that, and I think there's some truth in that, but what if you looked at it this way? What if you spin it around? What if you do that? Right? And so I think what Wittgenstein is going for is this thing that just is of no use, right? We're going to fix language, spoken, written language, so that it is only 100% fact-based, which is not what it has ever been used for. It's not what it was invented for. Some of the earliest written language are sort of ledgers, right? Are accounting books. But those far, right? I mean, that was happening thousands and thousands of years after people started to talk to each other and tell stories and lie about each other and flatter each other and do all the imprecise stuff. Yeah. They invented religions and etc. It's just, I don't know, right? I mean, language should be, and it is, a vehicle for the communication of feelings, and math is what our boy Ludwig is trying to get to here. And apparently just kind of forgetting that we already have that language, right? Mathematics already does what he's asking for here. And so then what are we talking about? Yeah? So there it is, I guess. I don't know. You tell me. The comments are open. Say, Phil, you're not getting it. There's an atomic fact that you missed or something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that I missed it. I think I know exactly what he was trying to say. And he's just wrong. And it's interesting to note that much later in his life, after he wrote this and then said, and out. Because I have now proven that philosophy is pointless, because it's a lot of mishmash of non-factual stuff. So I wrote this, ended philosophy, I'm out. He went out to the country and started teaching like elementary school, and then was kind of lured back into the academy, and then started writing like, yeah, not so much what I was saying there. And yet here we are, right, with the book that you have to read to have a full understanding of Western philosophical thought. It got me 16% of the way through my 100-book challenge. So for that, I value it. I don't know. And again, I pulled out individual quotes here that you will probably see me use, right? Because I think the strength of this book isn't in anything that it actually says in terms of its overarching message. I think the value of this book has been a wealth of out-of-context quotes that fuzzy-minded philosophers can twist to their own non-factual meanings. I may just end up doing some of that myself. All right, this has been Ludwig Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. I have been Tractatus Logico-Phil. That's an atomic fact, and there's no way you can prove that wrong. I will see you when I see you, which is going to be pretty soon, because I've been finishing books. I've been super busy, very deadline, big deadline energy moment in my life right now. But I have been finishing books. Yes, some of them are super short. I have been finishing books faster than I can make these videos, so you will see more. Okay. The next one will be more fun than this one. Thank you for watching. I will see you again super soon. Take care out there.